I am Rich Valdes. This is the Jim Bohannon Show, and you're listening to the Westwood One Radio Network. Derek Maltz, he's a former director of special operations at the DEA, and there's a lot going on with drug enforcement in America. As you know, earlier we talked with one of our guests talking about how crazy the border crisis is going. And while we're going to get we have a news report that I wanted to play for you, but the gist of it is that there's an unprecedented number of fentanyl coming across the border, and that seems to be the new drug of choice, that and methamphetamines. And these drugs are killing people. But they're not just, your average junkie on the street. I mean, these things are killing people that are unsuspecting through counterfeit drugs. So I want to get to the bottom of that. Derek Maltz, welcome to the program.
How you doing, Rich? Nice to be on the program tonight.
Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. So I know that this is what you do. This is what you talk about. This is what you're an expert in. And I really want to let you take the floor here because this is something I think people hear about, and we get a little news bite on the news, and then it's over. Nobody knows what's going on. I know that this is something that hits home and hits people personally. One time I was on the phone for something work-related, talking to somebody, and he told me that his kid had taken experimenting with, I think it was Xanax or something like that. It ended up being made out of fentanyl, and lamentably he passed away. So, Derek Maltz, tell us what's going on.
Well, thank you, Richard, and I appreciate this discussion because it's a frightening trend that's going on around America. It's not just one area, and it's impacting all American families. It's not just the rich or the poor. It's like the tribal leaders in Montana declared a state of emergency a couple weeks ago. What we have now is something we've never seen in the history of the country. As far as I'm concerned, and I've been following this very closely, I work with the families on a regular basis that have lost loved ones. We have a chemical weapon attack against our future generation. We're losing 295 kids a day. And you know what? That's a very low number because the morgues and the coroner's offices, the medical examiners, they can't keep up with the dead bodies. I mean, just to give you an example, Richard, like Will County, Illinois, last Monday on the June 6th, they lost 10 people, 24-hour period. They lost 3 more later in the week. And I think so far in the month of June, they lost 16 people dead. In D.C., Washington, D.C., we had 29 suspected opioid overdoses in 2 days last, June 8th to June 10th. El Paso, Texas, we had 9 in a 24-hour period. I could go on and on and on. But the thing is what people don't realize is like the DEA administrator, who's also the former Attorney General of New Jersey, Ann Milgram, she put out that the DEA last year alone seized enough fentanyl to kill every American. It was 20 million pills and 15,000 pounds of fentanyl. And for the listeners that don't understand, it's like 4 grains of salt in your hand. If that was fentanyl, it could kill you. 1 sweet and low packet, which is 1 gram, that could potentially kill 500 Americans. And so we have a very dangerous national security partnership between the Mexican cartels, as far as I'm concerned, are a terrorist organization. They've killed more Americans than any other terrorist organization in the history of the country. And they're working with the Chinese transnational criminals. And so right now, the Chinese criminals are taking on a more comprehensive role in not only drug distribution and manufacturing of chemicals, but the money laundering. The money laundering is huge. Like years ago, Richard, you probably remember, it was Hispanic money laundering going on. They'd send up the operatives from South America or Mexico, Central America. They'd pick up money. They launder it through the banks. Now we have the Chinese students running around our country, picking up millions of dollars, and they're laundering the money instantly over their encrypted apps and their Chinese, WeChat, for an example. They're moving money, and the money then is getting back to the Mexican cartels in record speed. So we have an explosive situation with a tsunami of not only, and I'm glad you mentioned methamphetamine. Last year alone, they seized 190,000 pounds of fentanyl at the southwest border. I'm sorry. Let me say that again. Methamphetamine. They seized 11,000 pounds of fentanyl. And so we have record levels of seizures. So what does that tell you, Richard? If you're seizing 190,000 pounds of meth, what the hell is getting into this country? Another good example, I always tell anyone I talk to, because it's a very simple illustration. The DEA in Phoenix, in 2015, they seized 0 fake Mexican oxy pills, the deadly fentanyl pills. In 2021, they seized 12 million pills. So it went from 0 to 12 million seized. On one day in December, they seized 1.7 million pills, working with the state and local police. So we have a situation that I'll repeat over and over again. It's never happened before. The mainstream media is not talking about it. President Biden, our Congress, our vice president, our borders are. They don't go down to the border. They don't talk about this stuff. And American families are suffering. And it's not just, like you said very appropriately, it's not just these, drug addicted people that have had issues for years. These are sometimes 13-year-old kids getting on their social media in their bedrooms at night, never used drugs in their life, order up one pill on Snapchat or Instagram, and the parents are finding them dead in the bedrooms. And how do I know that? Because I talk to the families every day. I'm supporting thousands of families around the country trying to spread the awareness because they have no voice. Nobody's listened to them because there's a stigma about drug use, but this is poisonings. These are not overdoses. We're trying to change the conversation because when people think overdose, it's a totally different perception than a poisoning. This is what's happening. The cartels are making these pills. They're making the fentanyl. They're mixing it in, all these drugs, heroin, meth, cocaine, and they're pushing it into the streets of America at record levels, and they're making billions of dollars. So
right,
besides having a humanitarian crisis and a migrant crisis, we have a national security crisis, and I wish somebody in this government would step up. DEA administrators done a great job, but we need more leadership to go after this threat, Richie.
All right, Derek, hang on there. I want to get to a couple of things because you said a couple of things that I think are really important. I want to talk about where the pills are coming from, how they're being manufactured, the difference between overdoses and poisonings. Folks, that's Derek Maltz. He's a former director of Special Operations Division at the DEA. And this is the Jim Bohannon Show. I'm Rich Valdes, 866-505-4626, 866-50-JIMBO if you want to speak with Derek Maltz. More to come straight ahead. This is the Westwood One Radio Network. Now, Derek Maltz, you mentioned a few things, and you were rapid fire, and they were all excellent points. And I want to take them apart a little bit, because one of the things that you talked about was, that the cartels are making the drugs. I saw a report here that says that these counterfeit pills are being produced in Mexico with the same stamps and markings as regular pills, and they're making their way into the hands of regular people like college kids that may want to study for an exam, buy an Adderall wherever they're going to buy it, and the next thing you know, they're dead. And it's not that they're overdosing, although they're technically overdosing, but it's because they're taking the wrong stuff because they're being poisoned. Am I getting it right so far?
Right. So the Mexican cartels have a very strategic and deceptive marketing campaign right now, and they're targeting our kids. Great example is about 3 weeks ago, Ohio State University during finals week, 2 young students, I think 21 years old, they died because they took what they thought was Adderall, and it was fentanyl pills, fentanyls we call them. And this is what's happening. Like, there's all these pills on the streets contain fentanyl. So kids think they're taking a legitimate Xanax or Percocet, an Oxycontin, an Adderall, and in fact, it's actual fentanyl made in these labs, these filthy, dirty labs in Mexico, coming right over our open border. So we have like just volumes of this stuff, like a tsunami of fentanyl hitting the streets, and our kids don't know what they're taking. Look what happened in May. You had 5 deaths from West Point, Florida, on a spring break. They take some cocaine, what they thought was cocaine, and there were like 5 or 6 overdoses. They all went to the hospital, and it became breaking news in the country because it was cadets. But that's happening everywhere in America.
This is definitely a problem. I'm looking at it. I mean, and it's everywhere. I'm looking at one article here from Riverside, California, where the DA's office grabbed 40,000 pills that are fake oxys. They got fake oxys. They're actually fentanyl. They were able to grab these, saying that they're worth more than $1.5 million on the street. But it makes you think, what happens when you don't get these? And right, the DEA isn't able to interdict these things, and the next thing you know, they're in the hands of the public.
So I'll give you another example, very important. The DEA lab did analysis of all these fake pills that they seized. What they have determined and have put out publicly, that 40% of the pills that they analyzed contain a potentially lethal dose of fentanyl. So, like I gave you the example, last year alone, DEA seized 20 million of these fake pills. Times that by 40%. That's how many potential deaths could have occurred to DEA's work. And then if you add in all the work being done at the border and all these other police departments, like you just said, California and New York and everywhere else. They seized a ton of fentanyl in New York City last year alone. We are being bombarded. And by the way, I'm not sure if you know this, but just last week, a bipartisan movement in Congress between Lauren Boebert from Colorado and Tim Ryan from Ohio, they put forth a resolution to declare fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction with the families against fentanyl. That's how serious this is.
And you know what? I'm glad they're thinking outside the box because, like you said, this is the poisoning of so many Americans. Now, I want to go to the phones. We have a caller calling in from Idaho. Let's go to Rand. Rand, you're on with Derek Maltz and Rich Valdes. Welcome.
Thank you for letting me visit. Wonderful program. I just wanted to say how moved I was by the fact that we're addressing this as poisoning. This is an attack. As a teacher who has lost students, I can tell you that it's painful and that we have to call it what it is. And I like that fact being brought forward. You know, it's poisoning. This is an attack, folks. And I think we need to see it as that. Do everything we can to educate our young. You know, those are bad odds. I think I heard 40% of them lethal dose, 40, 60. Don't play those odds. We need to educate our kids more and face it for what it is. Thank you.
You're welcome, Rand. Thank you for your call. Thank you, and I'm sorry for your loss. Now, Derek, it seems like we're getting so many people that can commiserate with this type of thing because it's so widespread. So right after this upcoming break, I want to ask you one more thing about, you know, what we can do to kind of fight back, but that's coming up. I am Rich Valdes. This is the Jim Bohannon Show. Our guest is Derek Maltz, former Director of Special Operations at the DEA. Our phone number is 866-505-4626, 866-50-JIMBO. You're listening to the Westwood One Radio Network. And the terrorist cartels are poisoning Americans with counterfeit drugs. Let's go to John in Florida. John, you're on with Rich Valdes and our guest, Derek Maltz, former Director of Special Operations at the DEA. Welcome.
Yes, Mr. Valdes, you and your guests are doing a fabulous job.
Thank you.
Yes. My question is this. How long does this fentanyl weapon of mass destruction, this chemical attack on America from the Chinese and the cartels, how long until some of these fake pills find their way into our actual pharmaceutical system?
That's an excellent question. Thank you so much. You're right. God forbid is right. Thank you so much for that, John.
Well,
Derek Maltz, go right ahead.
Great question. I mean, I could tell you after 9/11, we were very concerned about that when we started seeing a shift of a lot of purchasing of pharmaceutical drugs online in the dark web. And we were concerned that Al-Qaeda and the Taliban and other terrorists would start poisoning the drug supply. In 2006, we found our first lab in Mexico. The Sinaloa cartel, working with Chinese chemists, started producing fentanyl, and we saw deaths all over the middle of America. And that kind of went away for several years. Then it started popping up again, 2011, 2012, 13. And now we've been inundated with these deaths. So the President of the United States will say that the drug crisis is an unusual and extraordinary threat to our national security, but yet he will not answer the question, then why is the border wide open? The border czar is supposed to fix this problem at the direction of the president, and she doesn't even go down there. So the country's being inundated not only with these illegal migrants, but the poisonous drugs, and the cartels are making billions, and our kids and families are suffering.
Yeah. Now, Derek Maltz, with the remaining minutes that we have, I'd love for you to give us a wrap up. Tell us how people can find you and follow the work that you're doing, and what we can expect coming from you moving forward.
Underscore senior on Twitter. I have a YouTube channel. I have a national security public safety group on Facebook. I'm on Getter, Truth Social. So my name's kind of, unique name, so you could find me. But really what we have to do as a country is we have to unite. This is not a red or a blue issue. It's a red, white, and blue issue. So the politicians have to come together in a bipartisan way and start educating America. We need public service announcements so all our kids and our schools and our professors, educators learn about what's going on. Because right now, most of them are clueless, that no one's telling them. Mainstream media is not covering it. We need to shut down these chemical weapon production labs in Mexico with or without the Mexican government. If that means sending missiles into these labs, we need to do it because our kids are more important. We need to shut down and put pressure on China for the chemicals that they're sending to Mexico to make these poisonous drugs. And we need to shut down the money going back to the cartels, because without the money, without the chemicals, they can't make the poison. So we have to be way more aggressive and treat this like a national security emergency instead of some overdose of some poor drug addict. And that's not what this is. There's recreational users, there's first-time users that are dying instantly, and our communities are devastated. So we need to all come together. We need celebrities, professional athletes coming up and talking about this so the kids will follow it. Right now, the kids don't know about it.
100% right. Everybody, that's Derek Maltz. He's a former special agent with the DEA and director of their Special Operations Division. You can follow him on Twitter at Derek Maltz, at DEREKMALTZ_SR on Twitter and Getter and the rest of the social media. Derek Maltz, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Richard, keep up the good work.
You got it, my brother. Take care. Godspeed. Now, folks, this is a serious thing. I think he's 100% right. We're facing this is catastrophic, right? It's of epic proportion, and I'm going to continue to bring attention to it as I'm able to, as there's information available to me and experts like Derek Maltz and others, because this is something that has to be a consistent part of our national conversation.